The automatic doors whispered open, releasing a breath of jasmine and sandalwood into the soul afternoon. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across white marble that seemed to glow from within. Everything in this place spoke money, from the hand-stitched leather shoes to the tailored jackets hanging like works of art. When Dante stepped inside, the entire atmosphere shifted. Staff members straightened their spines. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dante, Nueva Vista's most notorious underworld figure, had arrived. His charcoal suit fit like it had been painted onto his lean, muscular frame. A platinum Rolex caught the light as he moved, and his face carried the kind of expression that made brave men look away. Those foolish enough to challenge him rarely got a second chance. But violence wasn't why he had come today. He told himself he was here to browse, nothing more. He reached up to straighten his tie, scanning the racks of imported designer, when a voice floated through the space like warm honey. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Zara's atelier." Something in his chest locked up. The boutique owner herself had emerged from a door behind the register. She was stunning. This tall African woman with skin like polished mahogany and thick coils of natural hair that crowned her head like a halo. Her presence seemed to fill every corner of the room. The nameplate pinned to her cream blouse read Zara in elegant script. Her smile was genuine, confident, touched with playful energy. "What brings you in today?" That was when it struck him like lightning. For over a year, Dante had carried a secret shame. The crash, orchestrated by his enemies, had left him with injuries the surgeons said would last forever. They told him he would never be a complete man again. His body had failed him, leaving him feeling hollow and less than human. Gorgeous Latina actresses had thrown themselves at him, but every encounter ended in humiliation and whispered mockery behind closed doors. But now, standing in this boutique, just hearing Zara's voice, his body woke up. Heat surged through him with a force he hadn't experienced in what felt like a lifetime. His pulse hammered. His manhood stirred, hardened, became undeniable. Terror gripped him. His jaw clenched tight. Cold sweat broke across his temples. He dropped his gaze immediately, unable to meet those kind, curious eyes. His lungs forgot how to work properly. "What's happening to me, sir? Is everything all right?" Zara tilted her head, concern softening her features. Her voice held a firmness that expected truth, the kind of tone that cut through lies. He couldn't form words, couldn't organize his thoughts. His breath hitched like someone had knocked the wind from him without explanation. He spun on his heel and walked straight back toward the entrance. His bodyguards outside looked confused as their boss brushed past them with unusual urgency. The chimes sounded again, and he was gone. Inside, Zara stood blinking in surprise. "Well, that was strange," she murmured to herself. "Did I do something wrong?" Later that evening, Dante sat in his high-rise apartment, gazing out at the glittering cityscape. A tumbler of scotch shook slightly in his grip. The scene kept replaying behind his eyes. Her smile, her voice, her welcoming energy, and the shocking, glorious truth that followed. For the first time in over a year, his body had responded. He slammed the glass down hard enough to chip the mahogany side table. "This can't be real," he said to the empty room. "I'm losing my mind." But no amount of denial could erase what he felt. 3 days crawled by. He couldn't eat properly. He couldn't concentrate during strategy meetings. His lieutenants noticed the change, but nobody dared question him. Finally, desperate for answers, he called his physician. "You're telling me you had a physical reaction?" The doctor's voice carried heavy skepticism through the phone. Dante's tone was clipped, defensive. "That's medically impossible. Your diagnostic results are clear. Mr. Rivera must be psychological, a phantom sensation, nothing tangible." But Dante knew what his body had told him. The fire had been too real, too powerful to dismiss. He leaned back in his leather office chair, massaging his temples. Maybe he was delusional, but he couldn't shake it. He wanted to see her again. Actually, he needed to. The following week, he found himself back at Zara's atelier. This time he came without his security detail, something unheard of for someone in his position. But caution had taken a back seat to compulsion. The entrance chime rang, and once more her voice reached him. "Back so soon?" Zara's lips curved into an amused smile. She wore a fitted burgundy dress that showed off her curves, and her eyes sparkled with intrigue. "I wouldn't have pegged the great Dante as someone who enjoys shopping this much." He froze again, his heart slamming against his ribs. The same reaction hit him like a tidal wave. His body responded instantly to the sound of her voice. Heat flooded his face, actually made him blush, and he quickly grabbed the nearest blazer from a display. "I'll purchase this," he mumbled, avoiding her eyes. Her laughter rang out rich and melodic. "Are you certain that one's 3 sizes too small for you? Unless you're buying it as a gift for someone." His ears burned hot. He dropped the blazer on the counter and grabbed another, then another, purchasing them all without checking a single price tag. Zara leaned forward across the counter, resting her chin in her hands. "You know, most customers don't shop like this, and certainly not someone like you. Why is Nueva Vista's most feared man suddenly my most loyal client?" The audacity of her question stole his breath. Nobody spoke to him this way. Nobody. And yet, instead of rage, he felt something different blooming inside him, something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt alive that night, carrying bags filled with clothes he didn't want or need. His men exchanged confused glances, but Dante ignored them all. His thoughts, his heart, everything was trapped in an endless loop. Her voice, her smile, her boldness. For the first time in years, Dante, Nueva Vista's savage mafia boss, felt powerless, and strangely, he didn't mind. The next morning, Nueva Vista's streets thrummed with energy. Car horns echoed between skyscrapers, neon signs blinked to life, and crowds rushed toward their daily pursuits. Inside the headquarters of the Rivera Syndicate, however, tension hung thick in the air. Dante sat at the head of a long conference table, his top men surrounding him. They discussed arms shipments, territorial disputes, and outstanding debts. But Dante barely registered a word. His mind kept drifting back to the boutique, to Zara's teasing grin and the playful challenge in her gaze. "Jeef, should we reroute the delivery to Bisusen?" one lieutenant asked carefully. "Handle it however you see fit," Dante muttered, waving dismissively. Every man at the table went rigid. The Jeef never delegated like that. Usually, his word was absolute, sharp, calculated, final. Today, he seemed distracted, soft, and that alone was alarming. By afternoon, he'd made his decision. Without explanation, Dante dismissed his guards and slid behind the wheel of his black Porsche alone. No convoy, no backup, just him. The streets seemed to part as the Mafia boss drove through Nueva Vista. His expression unreadable, but his heart racing wildly when the boutique's glass doors slid open again. The chimes sounded almost like mockery. Zara was there, dressed in a sleek black pants suit that hugged her figure perfectly, her hair styled in elegant twists. She glanced up, spotted him, and grinned. "Well," she said, her voice warm but amused. "If it isn't my mysterious regular, you know, people are going to start thinking you work here." Dante stopped mid-stride. His body betrayed him instantly, burning alive at her words. He cursed internally, struggling to maintain his composure. His lips pressed into a firm line as he moved toward a rack of designer shirts. Zara followed, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. "What's wrong? Has the cat got your tongue? Or are you planning to buy me out completely this time?" "Nothing," he said. Instead of elaborating, he picked a random gray shirt, then another, piling them over his arm like an anxious teenager. Zara crossed her arms, amusement dancing across her features. "You know, most mafia bosses intimidate boutique owners. They don't panic shop." That word panic made his jaw tighten. For a heartbeat, his old self, the ruthless boss, almost surfaced. But when he looked up and met her eyes, the fire softened into something gentler. Zara stepped closer, dropping her voice. "What's really going on here? Why do you keep visiting me? And why always alone?" Dante's throat constricted. Nobody dared interrogate him like this. Not his men, not his rivals, not even law enforcement. But this woman, this boutique owner, spoke to him as though he were simply a man. Not a monster, not a kingpin, not a savage, just a man. For the first time in years, he felt exposed under someone's gaze. He swallowed hard and forced his voice to remain steady. "Do I need your permission to shop here?" Zara tilted her head, grinning wider. "No, but you don't seem like the type who buys 15 shirts in one visit without trying them on. Either you're terrible at shopping or something else is going on." Her boldness both unsettled and thrilled him. He turned sharply, walking toward the register and dropping the shirts on the counter. "Wrap these up." "Of course," Jeef, she teased, her eyes gleaming as she began folding them. The way she said Jeef, not in fear, but in playful mockery, made him bite the inside of his cheek to hide the smile, threatening to break through. Meanwhile, across the street, a dark sedan sat waiting. Inside, members of a rival gang observed with growing suspicion. Why does Dante keep returning here? One muttered. He's always alone. No protection, no entourage. Very strange. Maybe the Jeef has developed a weakness, another replied. Their eyes narrowed. In the criminal underworld, rumors spread like wildfire, and the idea of the great Dante showing vulnerability at a public boutique was information rivals could exploit. Back inside, Zara handed him the shopping bags. There you go, mystery man. Another closet full of clothes you'll probably never wear. To her surprise, Dante chuckled softly, almost shyly. The sound startled even him. He hadn't laughed like that in years. You're bold, he said finally, meeting her gaze directly. And you're strange, she shot back with a grin. But at least you have excellent taste in boutiques. For a moment, their eyes locked. The air grew thick, charged with something neither could quite name. Dante's heart pounded, his chest heavy with longing and confusion, but then his phone vibrated. A message from his second-in-command appeared on the screen. Rival spotted in the area. They alert. He clenched his jaw, grabbed the bags, and turned toward the exit. Zara called after him, her voice light but tinged with curiosity. See you soon, Jeef. Don't be a stranger. The words hit him like a physical blow. See you soon. As he stepped into the evening air, Dante knew one thing with absolute certainty. He couldn't stay away. That night, he stood at his penthouse window once more, watching the city blaze with artificial light. He should have been strategizing, hunting enemies, fortifying his empire. Instead, he thought only of Zara, the way she teased him, the way she showed no fear, the way his body obeyed her voice like some ancient command. And for the first time in years, Dante, the savage Mafia boss, admitted something to himself. I want her. Not for business, not for ego, but for himself, raw, desperate, and absolutely real. The night sky over Nueva Vista glowed with electric color, but Dante's penthouse remained shrouded in silence. He sat alone in his private office, the city sprawling before him like a kingdom. He no longer had the energy to rule. Stacks of contracts and intelligence reports lay scattered across the desk, completely ignored. His mind kept circling back to one thing. One woman, Zara. Her laugh, her teasing, the way she looked into his eyes like he wasn't a monster or a legend, but simply a man who could blush, a man who could stumble, and even worse, she was the only one who made him feel truly alive. By morning, he was already behind the wheel of his Porsche, headed back to Zara's atelier. He hated how desperate this made him feel, hated the need burning inside his chest, but he couldn't fight it anymore. The boutique's glass doors chimed as he entered. Zara stood behind the counter, scrolling through something on her tablet. Today, she wore a deep emerald jumpsuit that highlighted her curves like it had been custom-made. She glanced up, her lips already forming a knowing smirk. Well, look who's back, she said smoothly. The man with more clothes than a fashion magazine. Dante froze as always. The moment she spoke, his body betrayed him instantly. Heat surged through him, his pulse quickening dangerously. He gripped the edge of a nearby display to steady himself, forcing his expression to remain neutral. Zara studied him with open curiosity. You know, Mr. Rivera, I've been thinking. Either you really love my shop, or you're running from something. He finally met her gaze, dark eyes narrowing slightly. And what do you think I'm running from? Her smile widened. Yourself, maybe. The word pierced him. For a heartbeat, he forgot to breathe. Zara laughed softly, breaking the heavy silence. I'm only teasing. But seriously, what's going on? You never bring guards. Never bring anyone. You just buy clothes like it's some kind of therapy. Dante's jaw tightened. If only she knew. If only she understood how much power she unknowingly held over him. Instead of answering, he grabbed a sleek charcoal jacket from the rack. This one, he muttered. Zara came around the counter, moving close enough that her perfume wrapped around him like a spell. She reached for the jacket, her fingers accidentally brushing against his hand. He jerked back slightly. Her eyes flicked up sharp and amused. Are you nervous? No, he lied. The word tasted bitter. Yes, you are, she teased. The great Mafia boss. Nervous in front of a boutique owner. If people knew this side of you, it would make headlines. His lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. For once, he didn't feel the urge to silence someone who mocked him. For once, he wanted to hear more. Outside across the street, the dark sedan had returned. Rival eyes watched through tinted windows, their suspicion growing sharper with each passing day. He's here again, one whispered harshly. And again, without any protection. This woman must mean something significant. If she does, she's his weakness, and weaknesses can be exploited. Back inside, Zara carried the jacket to the register. So, tell me something, she said casually, folding the fabric carefully. Why does someone like you, famous, feared, wealthy, keep coming back here? He opened his mouth, but no words emerged. The truth clawed at his throat. Because you woke me up. Because I thought I was dead inside until you spoke to me. Because I can't stop imagining your smile, your voice, your touch. Instead, he mumbled, I appreciate your boutique. Zara rolled her eyes. Sure you do. She leaned closer across the counter, lowering her voice to almost a whisper. You know, if you keep buying all these clothes, I might start thinking you're trying to impress someone. The air thickened instantly. Her words struck him deep, stirring images he couldn't control. Her in his arms, his lips on hers, her voice breaking with pleasure. His throat tightened, his body burning, his heart racing like he was facing his final battle. He clenched his fists hard. Not here, not now. That evening, Dante's right-hand man finally confronted him. Jeef, the man said carefully, choosing his words with precision. The rivals are talking. They say you've been distracted, that you're spending excessive time at a boutique. Dante's gaze snapped up, sharp as broken glass. And the man hesitated, sweat forming on his brow. They say you're weak. That a woman has captured your attention. The room went deathly silent. Dante rose from his chair, his presence suffocating every molecule of air. Do they believe a woman can destroy me? His man bowed his head quickly. Of course not, Jeef. But people are watching. If she matters to you, she's vulnerable. He dismissed his man with a wave, but the thought clung to him deep into the night. Danger surrounding Zara, the one person who had made him feel alive again. 2 nights later, he returned to the boutique once more, this time long after closing hours. The city had grown quiet, the street lights casting long shadows. He knocked gently against the glass door. Zara appeared inside, startled, but smiling when she recognized him. She unlocked the door. You again, do you ever sleep? He stepped inside, his presence filling the entire space. This time there were no customers, no noise, no distractions, just him and her. I wanted to see you, he said finally, his voice low and rough with honesty. Her playful expression faded into something softer. She studied him carefully, seeing the weight behind those words. Then sit, she said gently, gesturing toward a velvet chair. For the first time in his life, the savage Mafia boss obeyed without question. The city was restless that night. Rain hammered down on Nueva Vista in heavy, relentless sheets. The streets turned slick with water and reflected neon glow. Somewhere in the chaos, shadows moved with purpose. Rival gangs who had been waiting, watching carefully. Dante had made himself predictable. Every few days, he was spotted slipping into the boutique alone, without guards, without any protection. For the first time in years, the savage Mafia boss had developed a pattern, and patterns could be weaponized. The ambush struck fast. Dante had just left Zara's, arms loaded with shopping bags he didn't actually need. When the van screeched around the corner, black masked figures poured out like predators, weapons glinting in the rain. He reacted on pure instinct. His reflexes were razor sharp, dropping the bags. He drew his concealed pistol and fired. Shot was clean, precise. 2 attackers collapsed, but 4 more charged forward. A blade slashed across his ribs, white-hot pain tearing through him. He fought like a cornered animal, his fury painting the night crimson, but they outnumbered him, and his strength began to falter as blood soaked into his shirt. A car horn blared nearby, scattering the attackers as headlights cut through the storm. The rivals fled, leaving him staggering in the rain, wounded and seething with rage. Instead of calling his men, Dante did something reckless, something unthinkable for a Mafia boss. He dragged himself back to the boutique. By the time he collapsed against the glass doors, Zara was inside organizing inventory for the next day. She gasped at the sight of him, soaked, bleeding, his black shirt clinging to his body. Dante. Her voice was sharp with panic. She rushed forward, unlocking the door and pulling him inside. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" "Nothing," he muttered, his voice rough, teeth clenched against the pain. "Just a minor injury." She glared at him. "A minor injury? You're bleeding all over my boutique." He collapsed into one of the velvet chairs, his breathing shallow and labored. The savage Mafia boss who terrorized Nueva Vista now sat slumped like a wounded boy. Zara's heart pounded wildly. She grabbed a first aid kit from the storage room, hands trembling but determined. "Take off your shirt," she ordered firmly. He smirked faintly through the pain. "You're very bold. Don't joke with me right now," she snapped. "Do it." Slowly, he obeyed, peeling off the blood-soaked fabric. Zara's eyes widened at what she saw. Old scars crisscrossed his chest, layered with fresh cuts from tonight's fight. His body was strong, powerful, but marked by violence. She cleaned the gash on his side, pressing the cloth firmly. He hissed sharply, muscles tensing, his jaw clenching tight. "Hold still," she murmured, her tone softening despite herself. "You act like you're invincible, but you bleed just like everyone else." For a moment, their eyes locked. The distance between them shrank, heavy with something unspoken. "Why didn't you call your men?" she asked quietly. "Why come here?" He swallowed hard, his gaze burning into hers with intensity. "Because I trust you." Her breath caught. The words were simple, but the weight they carried was impossible to ignore. As she bandaged his wound, the air grew charged with electricity. His body was close, his breath warm against her cheek. Her hands lingered on his skin longer than medically necessary, tracing the scars as if reading the story of his survival. "You're insane," she whispered, shaking her head. "A Mafia boss showing up at a woman's boutique bleeding. Do you want to put me in danger?" His lips twitched into half a smile, half a grimace. "If they come for you, I'll destroy them." Something inside Zara shifted. This man was dangerous, broken, unpredictable. But in his rawness, she saw something authentic, something no amount of money or power could manufacture. Her fingers brushed against his, and the spark was undeniable. Dante leaned in slowly, his usual confidence stripped completely away. For once, there was no mask, no savage facade, just a man craving something he thought he'd lost forever. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, then deeper, hungrier. Zara gasped against him, her heart racing as his hand cupped the back of her neck, pulling her closer. The kiss was desperate, like a storm breaking after years of drought. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw something in his eyes that made her pulse stutter. Vulnerability, need, and something deeper that terrified and thrilled her. "Stay," he whispered, his voice raw. "Please." The word please from a man like Dante should have been impossible. But there it was, hanging between them like a bridge to something neither of them could name. The rain continued to fall against the windows, the city carrying on with its chaos. But inside the boutique, time seemed suspended. Dante sat in the chair, shirt off, bandaged, his dark eyes never leaving hers. Zara moved to lock the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and pull the curtains. When she turned back, he was watching her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "You don't know what you're getting into," he said quietly. "I'm not exactly a safe choice." "I don't want safe," she replied, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "Safe is boring. Safe doesn't make my heart race like this." He stood slowly, wincing slightly from his injury, but moving toward her with purpose. When he reached her, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "I've been broken for so long. I forgot what it felt like to want someone this much." "Maybe you were never broken," she whispered, echoing her earlier words. "Maybe you were just waiting for the right woman." Her hands found his chest, fingertips exploring the map of scars, each one a story of survival, of battles fought and won. He closed his eyes at her touch, a shudder running through him. "You're going to ruin me," he breathed. "I'm going to make you whole," she corrected. And then there was no more talking. Dante lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the back room of the boutique where a small sofa sat among the fabric samples and design sketches. He laid her down gently, his movements careful despite the fire burning in his eyes. Zara reached up, pulling him down to her, and this time when they kissed, it was with the hunger of two people who had been starving without knowing it. His hands explored her curves through the emerald jumpsuit, his touch reverent and desperate. She arched beneath him, her body responding to his with an intensity that shocked them both. When he found the zipper of her outfit, he paused, looking into her eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She answered by pulling him closer, capturing his lips with hers. What followed was passionate beyond either of their imaginations. Dante loved her with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with his reputation, as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever touched. Every kiss, every caress was infused with the gratitude of a man who thought he'd never feel alive again. Zara met his passion with her own fire, her body singing under his attention. She had never been desired like this, never felt so completely wanted and treasured. They moved together in perfect rhythm, two souls finding completion in each other. Hours later, they lay entwined on the small sofa, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. The rain had stopped, and the city lights filtered through the curtains, casting them in a soft glow. He chuckled nervously, running a hand through his dark hair. "Not with you. I feel like I'll completely lose control." "Then lose it," she said simply, stepping toward him, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. "I'm not afraid of you." That was all he needed to hear. He grabbed her hand, pulled her against him, and kissed her as though he had been starved his entire existence. His lips crashed against hers with fierce desperation, full of hunger that had been buried in silence for too long. Zara gasped into the kiss, her hands clutching his shoulders. Feeling the raw strength trembling inside him, he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the sofa as if she were the most precious treasure he had ever possessed. When their bodies touched, he moved like a man possessed by fire. Not clumsy, not uncertain, but burning with an intensity she had never experienced before. It wasn't just physical intimacy. It was proof, to himself, that he was still alive. Proof that the accident hadn't stolen his manhood. Proof that with her he was complete. Zara could barely breathe under the waves of passion he poured into her. He kissed every inch of her like he was memorizing her body. His hands explored with a mixture of reverence and urgency, as if each touch could erase the years of doubt inside him. "Mi amor," he whispered hoarsely against her neck. "You don't understand. This feels like the end of the world. Like if I don't give you everything now, I'll cease to exist." Her heart twisted at the broken honesty in his voice. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. His dark eyes shimmered with tears he was too proud to let fall. "Then live like the world is ending," she said, her voice soft but commanding. And he did. Dante moved with a hunger that made Zara's body tremble. He was both gentle and wild, romantic yet savage. Every stroke, every kiss, every touch seemed to say, "I'm alive because of you." Hours passed, but it felt like one long, endless moment of connection. When they finally collapsed into each other's arms, breathless and trembling, he buried his face against her chest like a child seeking comfort. His strong frame shook, not from exhaustion, but from the overwhelming relief of being liberated, free from shame, from fear, from loneliness. "I thought I was broken," he confessed, voice muffled against her skin. "All those nights I believed I was half a man." He pulled back, staring at her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "And then you appeared. Mi amor, you gave me back everything. You healed me." Her eyes softened with emotion. She ran her fingers through his messy black hair, smiling at the man who only hours ago had seemed so untouchable, so terrifying to the world. To her, he was simply human, raw, vulnerable, and hers. "Maybe you were never broken," she whispered. "Maybe you were just waiting for the right woman." That struck him harder than any bullet ever could. He kissed her again, slower this time, tasting every ounce of sweetness her lips offered. From that night forward, he knew Zara wasn't just another woman passing through his life. She was his cure, his miracle, his salvation wrapped in silk and laughter. And for Zara, the shock of his passion that night left her stunned. She had never been loved with such desperate romance, such intensity, as though the man was writing his soul across her skin. She realized she wasn't just helping him reclaim his strength. She was falling into something far deeper than she had ever imagined possible. For the first time in his violent, chaotic life, Dante whispered words he never thought he'd say. "Don't leave me ever." And for the first time in hers, Zara answered without hesitation. I'm not going anywhere. The city outside kept shining, oblivious to the storm of love inside the penthouse. But in that room, under the glow of dim golden lights, the Mafia boss and the boutique owner sealed something more powerful than any criminal deal, more dangerous than any gang rivalry, and more unbreakable than any scar tissue. Raw, unstoppable, and burning as if the world was ending. Hello, beautiful souls. In this story, we discover that no matter how broken you believe you are, the right love can restore you completely. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. The weeks that followed their night together should have been blissful, but Nueva Vista's underworld doesn't allow for fairy tale endings. Dante knew the danger was escalating when his most trusted lieutenant, Carlos, approached him with intelligence that made his blood freeze. Chief, we have a problem. The Serpiente cartel has been asking questions about the boutique. They know you've been going there regularly. Carlos placed surveillance photos on Dante's desk. Images of him entering and leaving Zara's atelier, timestamps showing his predictable pattern, his vulnerability exposed in stark black and white. They've identified her as your weakness. Word is they're planning something. Dante's jaw clenched as he studied the photos. In every image, he looked different than the feared Mafia boss the city knew. Softer, more human, completely exposed. How many people have seen these? Too many, Carlos admitted. The streets are talking. Some of our own men are questioning your judgment. They say love has made you weak, that you're putting the entire organization at risk for one woman. The weight of leadership had never felt heavier. Dante stood at his office window, looking down at the city he'd spent years conquering, now threatened by the one thing that made life worth living. Set up a meeting with the Serpiente leadership. If they want to discuss terms, I'll listen. But if they think they can threaten what's mine, his voice dropped to a deadly whisper. They'll learn why Nueva Vista fears my name. Meanwhile, across the city, Zara was dealing with her own complications. The boutique had been unusually quiet for days, her regular customers mysteriously absent. She noticed the black cars parked across the street, the men in suits who watched but never entered. Her assistant, Maria, pulled her aside one afternoon, fear evident in her voice. Miss Okafor, maybe you should take a vacation. Some customers have been saying things, rumors about dangerous people being interested in the shop. I'm scared. Zara's heart sank. She knew this day would come, had seen it in Dante's eyes that first night he'd appeared bloody at her door. Love with a man like him came with a price, and now others were paying it too. That evening, Dante arrived at the boutique as the sun was setting, but this time he wasn't alone. Two men flanked him, their eyes constantly scanning the street. The romantic secrecy of their relationship had been shattered by necessity. When he entered, Zara was waiting behind the counter, her expression grave. We need to talk, she said before he could speak. I know about the surveillance, about the threats. My staff is scared, my customers are staying away. This has to stop. Dante's heart clenched at the pain in her voice. He'd brought chaos into her peaceful world, infected her life with the violence that followed him everywhere. I can protect you, he said quietly. My men can watch the shop, escort you home, ensure your safety. No, Zara's voice was firm. I won't live in a cage, no matter how golden. And I won't let innocent people get hurt because of me. She moved closer, her hand finding his. But I also won't let fear drive me away from you. We need another solution. That night, they developed a plan that would either save their relationship or destroy them both. Dante would stage his own death, fake his assassination and disappearance. Officially, the great Dante Rivera would be no more, eliminating the threat to Zara and his organization. Unofficially, he would rebuild from the shadows, creating a new identity while maintaining control through Carlos and his most trusted men. The plan was dangerous, requiring him to trust people completely, to give up the power and recognition he'd spent years building. But as he looked at Zara, saw the woman who'd given him back his humanity, the choice was simple. Carlos was briefed on the operation, told to spread word that rival cartels had finally succeeded in eliminating Dante Rivera. A staged crime scene was prepared, complete with blood, bullet casings, and Dante's personal effects. The story would be that he'd been ambushed leaving a meeting, his body thrown into the Rio Nueva Vista, never to be recovered. For Zara, the hardest part was the performance. She had to appear devastated by news of his death, convince the world that her heart was broken while knowing he was alive and hidden. She closed the boutique for a week of mourning, played the grieving lover perfectly while secretly preparing for their new life together. The Serpiente cartel celebrated what they believed was their victory, assuming they could now move into Rivera territory without resistance. They were wrong. Carlos proved to be a brilliant puppet master, executing Dante's orders while allowing everyone to believe he was making independent decisions to honor his fallen leader's memory. From his hideout in an abandoned warehouse across the city, Dante watched his empire continue functioning, his reputation growing even larger in death than it had been in life. Nueva Vista's underworld whispered about the ghost of Dante Rivera, how his organization remained untouchable even without their leader, how his spirit seemed to guide every strategic move. But the separation from Zara was torture. They could only meet in secret, stolen hours in safe houses and hidden locations. The passionate romance of their boutique encounters was replaced by desperate, careful meetings where every moment felt borrowed from fate. 1 month after his staged death, intelligence reached them that changed everything. A rival faction within the Serpiente cartel had discovered the deception, learned that Dante Rivera was still alive. Worse, they had tracked down his location and were planning to finish what they'd started. The final confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday night that mirrored the weather from their first intimate encounter. Dante and Zara were at a safe house on the outskirts of Nueva Vista when Carlos burst through the door, blood on his shirt and panic in his eyes. "They know, Chief. The Serpientes found our operation, killed 3 of our men, and they're coming for you. We have maybe 10 minutes before they arrive." Dante grabbed his weapons while Zara collected the emergency documents they'd prepared. But as they reached the back exit, the sound of vehicles surrounded the building. Spotlights blazed through the windows, illuminating the space like a theater stage. The voice that came through a bullhorn was cold and mocking. "Dante Rivera, the dead man walking. Come out now, and we'll make it quick. Send out the woman first, and maybe she lives through this." Dante looked at Zara, seeing his own determination reflected in her eyes. She wasn't running, wasn't cowering. Instead, she was checking the pistol he'd taught her to use, her movements calm and precise. "If we're going to die tonight," she said quietly, "we die together. But we're not dying without a fight." What followed was a battle that would become legend in Nueva Vista's criminal history. Dante and Carlos fought with the desperation of men protecting everything they loved, while Zara proved she was far from helpless, providing cover fire and strategic support that kept them alive through the first wave of attackers. The safe house became a fortress, every window and doorway a potential point of attack or defense. Dante moved through the building like a shadow, his knowledge of urban warfare turning familiar rooms into deadly traps for the invading cartel members. But they were outnumbered, and ammunition doesn't last forever. As the battle reached its climax, with fires burning and sirens wailing in the distance, Dante made a choice that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of fighting to the end, he walked out into the spotlight, hands raised, voice carrying clearly through the night air. "You want me, here I am. Let the woman go and you can have Dante Rivera's head. But know this, I didn't die before because I was weak. I disappeared because I found something worth living for. And now I'm choosing to die for the same reason." The Serpiente leader emerged from behind an armored vehicle, assault rifle trained on Dante's chest. "You think this is some romantic movie, Rivera? You think love makes you noble. Love makes you stupid, and stupid men don't survive in our world." But before he could pull the trigger, the night exploded with new gunfire from a different direction. Carlos had used the distraction to circle behind the attackers with reinforcements, Rivera loyalists who'd learned of the assault and come to save their leader. The battle that followed was swift and decisive. The Serpientes found themselves caught between 2 forces, their surprise advantage lost, their overwhelming numbers rendered useless by superior positioning and desperate motivation. When the smoke cleared, Dante stood among the bodies of his enemies, wounded but alive, Zara safe in his arms. The war was over, but the victory came with a price. Too many people had died, too much blood had been spilled, too many innocents had been threatened. Nueva Vista's authorities, who'd long tolerated the criminal organization's existence, now demanded action. Federal investigations were launched, forcing major changes in how the underworld operated. Dante Rivera had to make a choice. He could return to his old life, rebuild his public empire, and continue the cycle of violence that had nearly cost him everything he loved. Or he could walk away completely, disappear with Zara into a life where their love didn't come with a body count. They chose love over power, peace over influence. Using offshore accounts and hidden assets, Dante and Zara purchased a small villa in Costa Rica, far from Nueva Vista's dangerous streets. He kept minimal contact with Carlos, who took over official leadership of what remained of the Rivera organization, transforming it into a more legitimate business operation. Their new life was quiet, simple, and perfect in ways Dante had never imagined possible. Zara opened a small art gallery that showcased local talent, while Dante discovered he had a talent for furniture making, his hands creating beauty instead of destruction. They married on a beach at sunset, no family or friends present except for each other. The ceremony officiated by a local priest who knew them only as a couple in love. Their vows were simple but profound, promises made without the shadow of violence hanging over them. In the evenings, they would sit on their terrace overlooking the ocean, Zara reading while Dante worked on his latest woodcarving project. Sometimes she would catch him staring at her with the same wonder he'd shown that first day in her boutique, amazed that she was real, that this life was possible. "You're thinking too hard," she would tease, just like she had when he'd been a terrified Mafia boss buying clothes he didn't need. And he would smile, pull her close, and whisper the same words that had saved them both. "Mi amor, you gave me back everything. You healed me." 1 year after their wedding, Zara discovered she was pregnant. The news should have been purely joyful, but it brought unexpected fears for Dante. He'd spent so many years dealing death that the prospect of creating life felt miraculous and terrifying. What if the violence followed them? What if his past threatened their child? Zara found him one morning sitting by the ocean, staring at the horizon with worry etched across his features. She sat beside him, taking his hand in hers. "You're not that man anymore," she said gently. "You chose love over fear, chose building over destroying. Our child will know only the father who makes furniture with gentle hands, not the man who once ruled through intimidation." Their daughter was born on a clear autumn day, small and perfect, with Dante's dark eyes and Zara's stubborn chin. When the doctor placed her in Dante's arms for the first time, the transformation was complete. The last remnants of the savage Mafia boss dissolved, replaced entirely by a father whose world now revolved around protecting innocence instead of destroying it. They named her Isabella, after Dante's grandmother, a woman who'd believed in second chances and the power of love to redeem even the most lost souls. As he held his daughter, Dante whispered promises in Spanish and English, vows to be the father he'd never had, to create a world where she would never know fear. Years passed peacefully. Isabella grew into a bright, curious child who spoke 3 languages and loved helping her father in his workshop. Zara's gallery became a cultural center for the small town, bringing art and beauty to a community that embraced the mysterious couple who'd appeared with money and kind hearts. Sometimes visitors would arrive, tourists who claimed to recognize Dante from somewhere. But the years had changed him so completely that no one could place where they might have seen his face. The dangerous edge was gone, replaced by laugh lines and the gentle confidence of a man who'd found his true purpose. Carlos visited once, 5 years after they'd left Nueva Vista. He brought news that the Rivera organization had successfully transitioned into legitimate business, running construction and import companies that employed hundreds of people legally. The streets were quieter, the violence significantly reduced. Nueva Vista had healed, just as its former crime lord had. When Carlos left after a week of fishing and family dinners, Dante felt closure settling over his past like a soft blanket. The man who'd terrorized a city was truly dead, not because of bullets or betrayal, but because love had offered him something better. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Dante and Zara renewed their vows in the same spot where they'd first married. Isabella, now 9 years old, served as their ring bearer, giggling as she walked down the beach aisle they'd marked with flower petals. This time, their celebration included the entire town, Friends and neighbors who'd watched their love story continued to unfold with the same passion that had first brought them together. That night, after Isabella was asleep and the guests had gone home, Dante and Zara walked hand in hand along the shoreline where their new life had begun. The moon reflected off the water, creating a silver path that seemed to lead toward infinite possibilities. "Do you ever miss it?" Zara asked, not for the first time over the years. "The power, the respect, the adrenaline of that life." Dante stopped walking, pulling her close enough to see the stars reflected in her eyes. "Every day," he admitted, causing her to tense slightly. Then he smiled, the expression transforming his face. "Every day, I wake up grateful that I was strong enough to choose something better. Power is an illusion, mi amor. This is real. This is everything." They kissed under the stars, the same passion burning between them that had ignited in a boutique years ago, but now tempered by security, deepened by shared experiences, and sanctified by the family they'd built together. Their love story had become legend in Nueva Vista, whispered about in the same breath as Dante Rivera's mysterious disappearance. Some said he'd been killed by rivals. Others claimed he'd fled the country with stolen money. But those closest to the truth, the ones who'd known him best, told a different story. They said Dante Rivera had found something more valuable than any empire, something worth giving up everything to protect. They said he'd found love, real love, the kind that doesn't conquer or control, but heals and transforms. And in the end, that love had been more powerful than any weapon, more lasting than any criminal kingdom, and more beautiful than any treasure he could have stolen. The boutique where it all began still stood in Nueva Vista, though it had changed hands several times since Zara's departure. Sometimes new owners would find old photographs wedged behind mirrors or forgotten in storage rooms. Images of a beautiful African woman and a mysterious man in expensive suits, their eyes holding secrets that time couldn't erase. But the real story lived on in Costa Rica, in a villa where morning coffee was served on a terrace overlooking paradise, where a former crime lord taught his daughter to read while his wife painted sunsets, where love had proven stronger than violence, and where two people who'd found each other in darkness had built a life filled with light. Their story became a whispered legend, passed down through generations of Nueva Vista's underworld, a cautionary tale and a promise that redemption was possible for anyone brave enough to choose love over power, peace over violence, and hope over fear. And every year on the anniversary of the night Dante first walked into Zara's atelier, somewhere in Costa Rica, a man would wake before dawn to prepare coffee for his wife, their ritual beginning the same way it had for 20 years. He would whisper the same words that had saved them both. "Mi amor, you gave me back everything. You healed me." And she would smile, pull him close, and whisper back the same response that had sealed their fate. "Maybe you were never broken. Maybe you were just waiting for the right woman." Their love story was proof that even the most hardened hearts could find redemption, that passion could heal the deepest wounds, and that sometimes the most dangerous men needed only one thing to become heroes in their own lives. Love. Real, honest, transformative love. The kind that rewrites destiny and makes legends of ordinary moments. The kind that had turned a savage mafia boss and a brave boutique owner into soulmates whose story would be told long after Nueva Vista forgot the names of its other kings and queens of crime. Hello, beautiful souls. In this complete story, we witness the ultimate proof that love truly conquers all. When we choose love over fear, healing over hatred, and hope over despair, we don't just change our own lives. We transform everyone around us. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. Please subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to choose love, and that the most broken hearts often love the deepest. Until our next story together, remember that your own love story is still being written, and the best chapters may be yet to come.